How obvious is it when a phone makes an upgrade? You know, like when they release a new flagship the next year. Looking at the specs, there usually are big upgrades like with the chipset, the display, and the battery, but the quality of the sensors and the lenses don't always change. Let's see the result for ourselves with a comparison of the OnePluses. We have last year's flagship, the OnePlus 9 Pro, along with this year's gem, the OnePlus 10 Pro. There's a lot of footage waiting for us, so let the facts speak. The photos are as you would expect, good quality. Fortunately for us, we had really good lighting conditions that day as the sun was shining like there was no tomorrow. This allowed us to fully test the potential of these two devices and saw that in the majority of the photos, the main difference is that the 10 Pro prefers to sharpen up the photos a bit, while the 9 Pro goes the route of softer images. The secondary difference is that the 10 Pro is slightly more vibrant when it comes to photos that have brighter colors like orange and green, as you can see in the examples. It depends on what you would like to see in your photos, and I wouldn't necessarily say that one is better than the other. My personal opinion is that I have no preference and enjoy looking at the collection of photos produced by both of them, and this looks to be the same for the ultra-wide camera as well, as there is no visible difference in quality, and both of them are just doing great. Oh, and if you're enjoying this as much as we are, a like and a sub would be much appreciated. But do it really quick please, because we wouldn't want you to miss out on the portrait category, as if you watched our previous videos, you'll know how much I've praised the OnePlus 10 Pro for giving us great quality portrait photos when compared to other flagships. I've also mentioned that the 9 Pro really improved their portrait mode with software updates over the months, but their Achilles heel in this mode will be color reproduction when the sky and clouds are visible in the frame. The weather was quite sunny as I mentioned, but the 9 Pro makes it look like it was dark and cloudy, which is actually really interesting. Even though there were one or two photos here and there where the 9 Pro handled dynamic range better, the overall quality will be on the side of the 10 Pro, with the selfie portraits further solidifying this claim with the white balance being more accurate, along with the edge detection around the hair. It's good to see a visible improvement in the 10 Pro over last year's version, so let's continue to chase these details while we're shooting some video, and boy, is this gonna be a big surprise for you. At first, I felt like saying there isn't much difference between the two because my mind went towards the 10 being an improvement over the 9 for a major category, which is what you would expect. That's not really how it ended up though, and in fact, it's actually the opposite, with detail being the deciding factor. Aside from the white balance differences from time to time, there's just much more detail on the 9 Pro side, from the trees to the leaves, to the flowers, to me. It's just interesting how they must have tweaked something the wrong way, because flagships are usually copied and pasted with a few improvements. It's good to mention that the 10 Pro is a really new phone though, and they'll come through with software updates pretty soon. At least I hope so, because you just can't have a 9 being better than a 10. But enough of that, because right now, it's time to see if OnePlus also did something about the zoom, because it's a feature that they're not really known for. Both devices have a 3.3x optical zoom, so that's something they have in common. And while the digital zoom on the 9 Pro looks to be better detailed and sharp, the optical zoom activating at 4x definitely pushes the 10 Pro a few steps forward. While I feel some people will appreciate the 9 Pro retaining a soft texture, this is kind of counterintuitive with zoom because you'll be losing out on quite a bit of detail after a certain distance. 5x also holds a lot more detail on the side of the 10 Pro, and I honestly wouldn't recommend trying to zoom more than that because unless you have something like the newest Pixel, Galaxy, or Xiaomi or something, because you won't really get usable results after 5x most of the time. It is a close one, but the 10 Pro will edge it out with more detail at the most usable levels of zoom. There's one other thing that I'm not sure of though, because OnePlus also isn't known for that either, and that's gonna be the front camera. It's usually been average over the years, and also for some reason, still can shoot video with a maximum of 1080p at 30 FPS. Not to exaggerate, the selfies are fine, and our expectations aren't really that high either. What is actually a huge problem though, is that there's something up with the video of the front camera of the 10 Pro. If it can't really manage the focus the way that it needs to, the video is really choppy and dark. We tested this a couple of times more, and each time the video worked fine when we were close to the camera, but as soon as we moved away, this is what started to happen. The 9 Pro isn't working miracles here either, but the video is definitely working as intended, so it will be the victor in this category as we take a look at something that actually pleased me, because I assumed there would be no changes here and the same tech would be copied and pasted from one phone to the other. Try to pay attention to the top of the frame, and you'll see that the 10 Pro is a bit more stable than the 9 Pro while I'm walking, as the small stutters and jitters have mostly been taken care of by OnePlus. After turning on the extra stabilization, the difference is still minor, but it is there if you really pay attention. It's always a pleasure seeing these improvements and features that aren't the most valued by the general public, but OnePlus unfortunately didn't take the same approach when it came to macro, and they just dropped it from the 10 Pro. This feature wasn't really the best of quality on the 9 Pro, and I guess they didn't want to deal with it maybe? It's funny though because this device has one of the best optical zooms to pretend like it has a macro mode, and it works really well. So well that sometimes it can get the slightest distance closer than the macro mode on the 9 Pro, but it doesn't change the overall quality. This one will be a draw, and I don't want to talk about it too long because OnePlus obviously doesn't want me to, so I'm just gonna check out the slow motion feature with my favorite birds. 240 FPS at 1080p and 480 FPS at 720p. If I had to find a difference, I'd say that the 9 Pro looks a bit darker, but it's honestly not going to be a deciding factor. But there will be one of these for autofocus, as the 10 Pro is showing slight improvements with regard to focusing on a subject, even if it isn't exactly in the middle of the frame, which can be helpful in some situations where you're not in the best position to be moving around the phone and the subject is either moving around or sliding towards the edges. Strike up another point for the 10 Pro for this one. It's time to open up your ears and check the audio quality of these devices. This is the older model, the OnePlus 9 Pro, and over here we have the new and improved OnePlus 10 Pro. There's bound to be some differences because these are obviously different phones, and one of them is an improvement over the other. So, which one is better? Of course the 10, guys, it's a newer phone. Jokes aside, that's not what always happens, but we definitely prefer audio clarity over noise cancelling, and even though the 9 Pro does a really good job at the latter, the voice is dull compared to the crisp tones of the 10 Pro. Will it be able to keep it up and show us some crisp images at night though? Let's find out. I must admit I'm proud of the OnePlus, especially at night, because the software definitely has been tweaked with low light conditions in mind. Not only are they a brand that takes some of the best photos at night, they managed to preserve the lively colors while also keeping out the extra shadows. The 9 Pro had also shown a similar performance against the iPhone 13 Pro Max in one of the first videos that I did, and the 10 Pro is going to continue carrying this flag to the very end. There are a couple of photos where the focus is a bit lacking on either the 9 or the 10, but this is fairly circumstantial as the general outlook of the photos are very pleasing. Videos won't change anything either, as the quality is overall the same with just slight differences in white balance. What is really crazy though is that the 9 Pro can shoot 8K just like the 10 Pro, but it can also do it in ultra wide. I guess OnePlus thought that this wasn't really necessary, so they dropped it from their newest device, but it is a pretty cool feature. Overall, night footage is very similar between these devices, and they're both top tier. Now then, after all has been said and done, let's take a look at the result. The OnePlus 10 Pro is the winner with 5 categories under its belt, and 4 categories have ended in a tie, with 2 categories, including video, going to the 9 Pro. Just remember though, even when the 10 Pro took the lead, most of the time it wasn't a huge difference compared to the 9 Pro. With the insane discounts being applied by OnePlus to their older phones when newer flagships come out, the 9 Pro is still a good bargain. Take a look at the footage and categories once again to decide for yourself. Thanks for being with us once again, guys, and also thanks for hitting that sub button and liking this video. Take care, and we'll be back soon with another video.